Hello, my dear gardeners. To strip leaves of roses or not to strip those leaves? That is the question. And very often I hear one rosarian says, yes, by all means strip. Another rosarian says, no, you can't do that. So you have to look at the rose you have, and it all depends where you live. So hopefully at the end of this video you will be able to answer that question to yourself. And those answers can be different, again, depending where we live. So let's begin. All roses can be broadly categorized and put into two different categories. Roses which do benefit from winter dormancy, and roses which are perfectly fine to be semi-evergreen or evergreen and just live through the year after year. So let's focus on the first group of roses benefiting from winter dormancy. Usually those are hybrid teas, grandifloras, floribundas, shrub roses, which are depending on dormancy for their longevity, for the breakage of that cycle of diseases, for restart of the growing season, and for that wonderful performance in spring. And usually these type of roses are hardy. They usually grow in cold winters where we have harsh conditions, and they enter into full dormancy. Then we have another group. We have these semi-evergreen varieties and evergreen varieties. And usually those are southern beauties. They love to grow in warmer climates. They tolerate hot conditions. And usually when they need to go into the dormant time or winter time, they go into this quiet time where they don't produce a lot of blooms. They don't grow a lot, they don't produce a lot of canopy, they just stay quietly with their green leaves still present, or some of those leaves still present, and they have a little rest, and then spring comes and those roses wake up again and they're ready to bloom. So there was a question from the viewer who gardens in zone 8B, and she was asking me, should she defoliate her roses or not? Well, zone 8B is fairly warm, so temperatures, I assume, don't fall below freezing very often. And I would assume that a lot of her roses might be semi-evergreen. So if rose is healthy and the leaves are healthy, they're not diseased, I don't see why all the leaves should be defoliated. Because rose is still going through the process of photosynthesis, right? Rose still collects the energy from the sun. So why do we deprive that rose from that? I do believe into defoliating diseased leaves, not to bring that cycle of disease over and over through year and year. But if rose wants to stay evergreen, I don't see why the gardener should deny that rose to stay evergreen. There is one point in all of this. Very often, when the gardener buys a rose, and that rose is not really suited to warmer climates, that rose might struggle without dormancy, and gardeners might want to push that rose into dormancy. And what does it mean to push rose into dormancy? Well, if we want rose to have a break, we defoliate a rose and we slightly trim it, we slow down on watering, and rose will have this forced several weeks of quiet stage, and then rose will start leafing again and begin her growth. So if the gardener the viewer who asked this question, in zone 8B sees that the rose is struggling with diseases, going through the dormant period, and doesn't have that very clear, nice, beautiful spring growth, maybe that gardener wants to push rose into dormancy, give that rose a rest, and then rose will be all ready to begin again. So this is the answer. It all depends where you live and what rose you have. Another thing I wanted to touch, another topic I want to touch in this video would be, what is the weakest part of the rose which needs to be protected in cold areas? Of course, it's a graft union. And a lot of people who watch my channel know this already. I talked about it a lot, but I feel I have to say it again, because this is the all-inclusive series of videos about winterizing roses, right? So there is a confusion between own root roses, grafted roses, bare root roses, and potted roses. A lot of people confuse own roots with potted. Just they crisscross all those sections. So let's figure this out. we can receive roses in two different conditions, either in pots or bare root, right? So when we receive roses where we can see roots, very often coated with waxy seal or newspapers or shredded whatever, or we can receive roses potted in pots. So this is one section, how we receive roses. But then the way roses are bred, not created, grown on the fields where the breeders grow them, they can grow them as own roots or grafted roses. So own roots, roses grow with their own roots, and those roots produce a rose. But grafted rose would be, roots are different and rose is different. So that bud union is the most weakest part for winter protection, because if that bud union is damaged, the rose on top would be dead, and whatever is left, if it survived in the bottom, would be a different rose. And very often for us it's Dr. Huey, a red rose. And I hear people say, oh, my rose was pink and suddenly it became red. Maybe something happens with a frost in the winter. Yes, something did happen. That bud union was damaged, your rose died, and then rootstock, still living, because rootstock usually is very vigorous, and it's taking over, and you have a totally different rose. So that bud union has to be protected. And if you live in cold climates, I advise you to go for own root roses versus grafted roses. Again, because of that weakness of that bud union. Plus, people say that own root roses are much longer lived. And I really don't know, because all my roses in my garden is what, 12, 13 years old, and all my roses almost approaching the same age, and some of them are grafted and some of them are own roots, and they're all happy living. I'm very happy about that. So in cold climates, for example, from zone 1 to 4, we plant that graft union at least 3 inches under the soil level. From zone 4 to 7, it can be 1 or 2 inches under the soil level. And from 7 zone and up, zone 11, that bud union can be exposed to the elements. So I wanted just to tell that for the beginner Rosarians, because I want all of us to have these gardens with character. And roses should be present there too. All right, my dear gardeners? Next time I'm going to talk about how to winterize potted roses. There were a lot of questions about potted roses. See you next time. Please do subscribe, and happy gardening.